Welcome back everybody, my name is Tucker, this is Sporting Logically, and today is the first video of a new series titled Free Agent Friday. This is the second series I planned on rolling out this week, in addition to Trade Machine Tuesday that was unveiled a few days ago. Which, by the way, you guys have been crushing it in the comment section with discussions and suggestions on that video, and I'm really enjoying it, so thank you guys for that. Anyway, back to this video. Each week I will pick one particularly interesting free agent and take a look at their situation going into free agency, what kind of contract they could possibly sign, and which teams I could see them signing with. Just as with Trade Machine Tuesday, I want you guys to be very involved in this series. So if you have any thoughts on these players, or any players that you want me to cover in future episodes, be it restricted free agents, players with opt-out clauses this summer, or just good old-fashioned unrestricted free agents, be sure to let me know in the comments below. This week's subject is current Pelicans big man DeMarcus Cousins. As a result of him being out of the spotlight a bit after going down with a season-ending injury this past year, I think a lot of people have forgotten just how skilled and disruptive DeMarcus Cousins has been in his time in the NBA. Though never much of a defensive presence, he was a stat-stuffing machine in Sacramento, despite the franchise going through coaches at the same rate that I go through a box of Oreos. Purely from a physical standpoint, Cousins really doesn't have many equals at his position. He combines pure power and brute strength with a surprising amount of finesse and agility that's just hard to fathom for a man his size. He scores in the paint, is a pretty good passer, and keeps the defense honest as a jump shooter and driver. In his later years with the Kings, and especially once he joined the Pelicans via trade last year, he even showed an ability to make threes fairly consistently. Though it seemed like a bit of an awkward move for New Orleans to pair two dominant big men together in a league that's increasingly going smaller, Anthony Davis and Cousins had actually began to gel fairly well in the beginning of this past season. That was of course until Boogie went down with a torn Achilles injury, one that not only ended his season, but has also cast doubt over how it could affect him for the rest of his career. That particular injury is an especially scary one for teams potentially interested in signing him this summer. You'd be hard-pressed to find a case of a player that came back the exact same afterwards, and many never truly recovered. This injury is especially concerning for a player like Cousins that's so big and relies a fair amount on his lumbering agility to complement his skills. That is a lot of man to trust on a repaired Achilles tendon, and big guys are generally more injury-prone than guards and wings anyway. The point is that even if a team believes he'll be able to recover properly, there's still a ton of risk involved for a guy that prior to the injury was considered a surefire max contract player. That list of teams that could be scared off even includes his current employer. After experiencing great success late in the season and in the postseason without Cousins on the floor, implementing a system that allowed them to play at one of the fastest paces in the league, and playing Anthony Davis at the 5 spot, the Pelicans are reportedly reconsidering what was previously believed to be an easy decision to offer Boogie a max contract this summer and re-sign him. It seems as though the tables have turned a bit after the team saw how well they played with a smaller lineup. From the team being desperate to keep him after giving up some assets to acquire him last season, to now considering offering him a shorter deal at less than the max. That one play in which Cousins got injured has likely changed the market on him drastically. If other teams know that the Pelicans aren't prepared to offer him the max, as has been reported, then they know there's no need for them to either. On top of that, there are less than 10 teams in the league that could realistically create the space to sign a player in free agency at or near the max contract level, a much different scenario than we've seen the past few summers. Ultimately, I see Cousins having two options. Number one, if he wants to get as much money as possible right away, there are likely teams that would be willing to extend a 2 or 3 year deal at around or even above $25 million a year, allowing him to show he has recovered from the injury, and if he does that, cash in on another big deal when he hits free agency again before he gets to 30 years old. Number two, if he values long-term security in the wake of such a serious injury, he could probably get a 4 or 5 year deal, but it would likely be closer to $20 million annually or even less to protect the team when signing him to a longer-term deal. Let's start with the most obvious team. Even with the injury and how well they played sans Boogie, I'm sure the Pelicans would still love to bring back a player with as much potential as Cousins has. though they wouldn't want to risk long-term flexibility to do so. New Orleans would likely fall in the option number 1 camp from what I mentioned in the last section, a shorter-term deal with a higher annual salary to allow the big man to show he is fully recovered from the injury. If that doesn't interest him, then the other big player I could see for him this summer is the LA Lakers. They will have a ton of cap space this offseason and have been linked to any number of free agents. Depending on who the Lakers do and don't get this summer, I could see them going to Boogie as a backup plan of sorts if they're able to. They likely wouldn't sign Cousins as their only addition. He would be the second part of a plan in which they also brought in someone like LeBron James or Paul George, and were unable to get anyone else they might prefer over Cousins. They would also probably offer him a shorter contract similar to what the Pelicans would, so it would come down to which situation he prefers in terms of basketball and lifestyle that would ultimately decide his choice. Lastly, there is an option number 3 that I want to point out just to cover my bases. There's always the possibility that a team that feels they are near contention could take a big swing and try and get Cousins via a sign and trade. A few teams that I could potentially see being involved in this scenario would be the Spurs, Thunder, and Raptors, among a few others. It would be pretty difficult to try and figure out a deal that works for both sides in terms of Cousins' contract and the trade itself, and I'll save those details for a Trade Machine Tuesday in the future, but I wouldn't completely rule out the possibility. Just for fun, I'm going to throw a prediction out there to compare to what you guys have to say in the comment section about where DeMarcus Cousins will sign this summer. Personally, I think he's probably pretty far down the list of guys that teams with max cap space would want to sign this summer in the wake of his injury, which should give the Pelicans enough time to convince him to stick around on a 2 or 3 year deal. The Lakers are also pretty strong players here, and I wouldn't be floored if he ended up on some mystery team via a sign and trade. But ultimately, I think Boogie will end up staying in New Orleans, though anything could happen between now and the offseason. And that is the end of the very first Free Agent Friday. Thank you all very much for watching. I can't wait to have some discussions with you guys down in the comment section and to continue this series every week. If you liked the video, then leaving a like rating is a great way to let me know, and if you'd like to see more videos just like this, then be sure to subscribe to Sporting Logically for more content every single week. Thanks again, and I will see you all next time.